Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Life Inner Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Life Inner Show, we help people make more, work less, and live awesome lives. I am joined by my consistent, reliable, friendly co-host, Polish Peter.
Exactly. And as you can probably tell, my voice is a little bit sexier today on this particular podcast. It's got a little, so yeah.
He went to the, well, because here's the truth. Peter went to the New Kids on the Block concert and was screaming his little heart out.
Yeah.
Like,
No, actually, it was the Barney show.
So listen, we got an awesome episode, really, really cool episode for you guys today. We're going to talk with Bob Hunter, and Bob is involved in a business development and business funding business. There's a lot of, I use the word business a lot there. It's a little redundant, but
Can you say business building,
yeah.
Funding, business.
I don't know what I said. I don't know what I said, but it's a great episode. Don't take my blundering introduction as reflecting on this, because we talk a lot about, business funding, cash flow. Well, what do you do when you need money? When's a good time to get money? What are the terms like? How do you qualify? We talk about a ton of things that are all relevant for the small business owner or entrepreneur or investor that'll be really, really impactful and valuable for you.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about, getting some influx of cash into your business to help you grow, whether it's, payroll, whether it's R&D, whatever it might be, this might be a really good episode for you to listen to, because we do dive into a lot of those particular topics, actually the criteria the banks are looking for.
Yeah. Very, very.
Those things that you probably never even heard of.
Yep. Very, very useful episode. You're going to get a lot of information out of this. Let's jump into it right now. Here's our interview with Bob Hunter. Hey, Bob, what's up? Welcome to Life Inner Show.
Thank you for having me.
Man, I'm excited. Your information came over, and I feel like there's a lot of value that you can contribute to our listeners. And so we're going to talk about a couple of, and I don't want to give it away, I'm going to let you give it away, two of the biggest challenges that businesses face. But before we get into that, I want to know how you got into, so you do business funding right now and you do business development. Tell me, how did you get into that?
So on the business development side, I got into it because I basically had to. I lost my job over going blind in this eye, actually. Lost my job over that. Didn't really know how I was going to pay the bills because I had a good job before and I was making a good amount of money. And the whole unemployment thing is just not, it's not ideal. So I took all of the skills that I basically had in my job, because I was the director of operations development. That was my title. My whole job was to build departments and build solutions every 90 days and implement those for the company. So I basically took that skill set and that variety and started applying it to just clients that I met one at a time. And that's kind of how we got into business development. And then, and that worked until the pandemic, where we then ended up shifting into business finance, just so that we could survive the pandemic, but also so that we could help other people survive. So that's how I got into it.
So define the term business development for those who aren't really familiar with it. Like sometimes people say, like, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah. Business development can really vary, but our approach to it is one that is very methodical. So we basically listen to whatever your problem is, or what you feel like your problem is in your business, whatever the reason is that you think you're not reaching your business goals. And then we provide the solutions to kind of fill in the gaps for you. So one person might say that they feel like their website is not good enough, so we'll give them a new website. One person might feel like their marketing is terrible, so we'll do their marketing. One person feels like they need more processes and staff and training, so we'll teach them how to make SOPs. We'll teach them how to find staff and how to provide better management. So anything that is required for getting the business to a point where it's able to achieve its goals on a tangible and consistent basis, that is what we consider to be business development.
So here, question for you. How good are people at diagnosing the real challenge in their business? Do you feel like they're good at that, or they'll tell you it's one thing and you're like, no, actually, like, it's not that, it's something, because I'm just thinking right now, like, how many of us have Googled our symptom and we try to self-diagnose the problem we have instead of going to the doctor, and then we're way off? Like, are people close?
It's almost exactly the same, honestly. And the only difference is experience, right? So you don't know what you don't know in many cases. And the whole purpose of hiring a consultant or going to a person who's more experienced is that they're able to provide their insights into your problem and then show you, okay, so here's where you really need to focus. I know that you think it's this thing over here, but actually that doesn't matter. It's actually this thing right here. And so, yeah, it happens a lot.
Do you guys have like some sort of process that you bring people through where it kind of like makes them, or you get some sort of overview of their business, or you can get your own kind of like whatever 10,000 foot view of their business?
Yeah. We honestly just start with a conversation about where they expect to be. And usually the follow-up question to that is, well, what do you feel like is stopping you from being there now? And often that line of questioning will help them realize, okay, so this is really the root of my own problem. The other big thing is a lot of times people are in the weeds of their business. They're looking at it from the ground level. Every day they're looking at the problems that are in front of them. And so all that they can see are those problems. And they are thinking, if I can just solve these problems, then everything will be fine. And it's not until we have that high level conversation that they really realize, okay, so this is really where I need to be looking. And if I solve the problems up here, it trickles down to solutions for today. And overall, everyone is able to be more successful.
Man, that reminds me of that story. You guys may have heard of this before, where a doctor gets to work and he sees someone drifting by in the river drowning, and he runs in and saves him. Then another one comes, he jumps in and saves them, jumps in, and then someone else comes. He's like, "Hey, I need your help." He's like, and then he starts walking up the river. He's like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "Well, I'm going to find out who's throwing these people in the water." And so, like, it's kind of figuring out what the real source of the challenges are. That you're so right. I think a lot of times we're so stuck in the weeds as business owners, and we don't elevate ourselves to a vantage point that allows us to understand those things. Or maybe we do need another set of eyes. No, we just can't see it. We're too close to the canvas, no matter what our efforts are. And so that makes a lot of sense. So before we started recording, you mentioned two of the most common problems that you see in businesses through the clients that you worked with. What are those?
So marketing and undercapitalization funding, those are the two biggest ones. So on the marketing side, you have a really great business, really great product, whatever it is, but no one knows about it. So that, as you can imagine, enough of that for long enough is going to kill the business, because no matter how great your business is, if no one knows about it, you're never going to grow. The second biggest challenge is always going to be undercapitalization. So of every business that's going to start today, 90% of them are going to end up failing in the next 5 years. And the biggest reason for that is they don't have enough money. They don't have enough money to build the products that they want, or to hire the people that they need, or to implement the processes that they want to implement. And not having enough money is going to be the easy way to kill that business. So a lot of our conversations do end up being focused around those two things, helping people survive the first 5 years, making sure that they've got enough capital to operate and survive and thrive, and then making sure that they have enough exposure on the marketing side of things so that they're actually able to grow at a measurable rate.
When you refer, and so I'd love to talk about both of these and maybe focus more to start off with on the capitalization and the money side of things. So is capitalization, do you see more of it as a problem on the early initial phases of a business, or are you seeing this like throughout a business life cycle? So someone's 10, 15, 20 years in and they have a capitalization issue. Do you help those people as well? Or is it really just kind of like when you're starting out and you're trying to get this, maybe you have inventory to buy or whatever, people to pay, but at some point, should you have this figured out, and if in the business it should be working smoothly and you shouldn't have a need for cash flow after that?
It can happen to varying degrees as a business is going through its life cycle. So in the beginning, when you're trying to just build the foundation and simply start things, hire your first people, build your first products, build your first processes, it's very capital intensive to do those things, to build a business. A solution a lot of people follow is just simply bootstrapping, meaning that I'm going to sell things in small bits. As I make money, I put most of that money back into the business. I sell more of that thing. I build better processes. I repeat. Often, though, that ends up cheating you out of a lot of potential growth that you could have had. For example, with money itself, the bank by itself will be more than happy to give you all the money that you need if you can prove that you don't need it. I know it's a very ironic concept,
irony there, right?
But that's literally how it works. All the questions that you get asked are really to prove to the bank that you don't really need this money, like you're not desperate for it. And so once they feel comfortable lending to you, they'll be more than happy to give you more. Well, the funny thing is, if you already have $100,000 sitting in your bank, the bank will happily give you another $100,000, right? But how did you get the first 100? And so that's what I mean by having access to that capital immediately or in the beginning. So many people never really make it to having that first $100,000 sitting in the bank, and so they never actually get past level one. For an older business, it really becomes a conversation that's more about growth. You've been in business for a while. You survived all of the, I guess, all of the early pitfalls, right? If we're talking about like a game, like think of Super Mario, where, you're going through those levels, you die a few times, you start to learn where all the little traps are, and then you get better at getting over those, and then you get to the next level. Well, now you need the money because you're never going to grow out of your current phase until you've got some influx of capital to really help you now boost. Maybe that means expanding to other locations, expanding into different markets, expanding into different product lines, maybe scaling up to a point where you're now able to have more of an executive team to help you run the company on more of a corporate level instead of a small business level. So it really just varies why a person would be asking for capital, and then how much they need, and how much that money is really going to impact them.
That makes so I'm hearing like during the start and during the scale, like those are 2 points specifically, but you're not really talking about a business that needs money to maintain current operations. And if that's the case, then maybe something's wrong with your business model. Like you really got to fix that.
Right. And well, to an extent, because there are a lot of companies that deliberately run in the negative because they know that it's only going to be, just long enough to come over a certain hump, and then they run into profit. Tech companies are very big for this. So much money might have gone into product development and just research and everything, and they're not making any money because what they're building is not being sold to anyone. So they are technically running at a deficit, but they know that, all right, if we put enough money into this for long enough and we're successful in our development work, now we're able to take it to market, and now we're able to make that money back. So you are right that, yes, most businesses should not be operating at a deficit. Otherwise, there's probably an issue. But there are exceptions to that rule where it is appropriate. And it's measured. It's not like this is all happening by accident. That's another big factor. For a lot of people I talk to, they are definitely not intending to be running at a deficit.
That makes a ton of sense, man. And I could totally see that, especially with tech or anything that has a substantial like capital investment that's required. So tell me like how this works. Like you mentioned how the banks, basically it's the irony. Yeah, you don't need it, and that's when they'll give it to you. Are business funding companies different? Like how do so let's say a business startup comes to you. What is the security you have for that? Because they don't have a track record yet. Like, and how would they get the funding if they chose to like examine this or explore it?
Therein lies the problem. So 9 out of 10 people that come to me, they do not qualify initially. There's usually some work that has to be done, and that work usually takes at least 90 days to even to get through the basics. And so a lot of people don't know what those basics are, so they never even thought to do them. We're talking about business administration stuff. So maybe you were great about your passion project that you turned into a business. You've got good products, you do have customers, but you've been putting all this money into your personal bank account. Or you have a separate bank account, but it's still a personal bank account. It's not actually a business one. Big no-no, number one, right? So the bank wants to see that you have a cash flow history to a dedicated business account. Maybe you've been doing this business from home. You never actually got a business address because you didn't need one, or you thought you didn't need one. You're now applying for loans. Bank wants to know where you're doing business. They see its residential address, denied. You're putting on your application your phone number. It ends up being just your regular personal cell phone number, not a dedicated business phone number, right? Denied. So my point, I could go on and on and on about this, but my point is a lot of business owners simply don't even know what they need to be doing to meet the basic qualifications. And none of those things even got into the financials yet. We're just talking about basic qualification here, right? So we're really just helping people understand what their qualifications are, what their business credit actually is, and how they get that established, how they make a track record of success and show that on paper. And then once they've done that, now we can start talking about, all right, so here's how you go and you get the Amex, and here's how you go and you get the business line of credit, and here's how you go and get a term loan and everything else.
So it seems like a little bit of, we have business owners out there that aren't even like, dotting their I's and crossing their T's, like, just basic, simple, do you have a book set up, right? Or are you putting this in an Excel spreadsheet, like that kind of stuff. Right. And then, so what, for a business, like what kind of criteria are used? Like, for instance, I'm familiar with like mortgages and, front end ratios, back end ratios, how much you can get approved, loan to value. How do you do that with a business?
So with
How do you know what someone's going to approve for?
Well, so there are parameters. There's like a checklist. Now we're working with 209 different lenders, so each of them has their own box they want you to fit in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, there are a few things. Number one, cash flow. We need to be talking about at the minimum $10,000 in recurring revenue per month, meaning you've got a consistent 10K per month coming into a business bank account, right? So that's the first one. We want to make sure that we're showing relationships with at least 15, specifically at least 15 other parties, other accounts. So that can be, let's say that you've got a store card with Staples, a business card with Staples. That's an example. You've got a Uline card, you've got a gas card, you have an Amazon account for your business. We need 15 relationships. You have a line of credit at this bank. Let's say you've got a business secured credit card at that bank. You have another regular business credit card. All of that just needs to total up to 15. So 15 healthy accounts that show you have relationships with these people, these vendors, these creditors. You're paying your bills on time. Therefore, you're now more likely to pay the bank on time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So you've got the right amount of cash at the minimum. And also note, a better number is 30,000. A lot of people don't meet that though. So 10 is just the bottom, right? So you've got the cash flow. You have at least those 15 relationships. Now you've established a business credit score. That score needs to be an 80 or higher. Okay. So if we go and check Dun & Bradstreet, we need to see that you've got a score of 80 plus. If it's less than that, just keep on building relationships, paying your bills on time until you get to that. Another big one, and this is one that really gets a lot of people because of the nonsense that is on Instagram and in Facebook and YouTube and other places where there are so many people out there that say, oh, you can go and get an EIN and go get a certain type of car or whatever. You're just going to be able to put your EIN down on whatever you want. They're just going to give you money for that EIN that took you all of 5 minutes to fill out the form on irs.gov. Does not work that way. Even if you have your EIN, you still need to have good credit. So a lot of people think they're just going to go get their EIN and not have to worry about their credit because they're going to be using their business credit for everything. You're still going to get asked. And if your if your personal credit is not 680 or higher, you're probably going to get denied. Or if you don't get denied, the conversation is definitely going to be more difficult. If we're talking less than 650, the conversation is going to be really difficult for whatever you're trying to get.
Yeah.
So 680 is usually the number that people want to see. That doesn't mean that you'll have to put down a personal guarantee for everything. But if you can't yourself, as the primary business owner, show that you've got a personal score of 680, they're not going to want to give you the loan because they're still technically giving the money to you as your business. So they still need to be able to trust you as the person who's going to be handling that money. There are ways to get around that, like, for example, partnering with someone that does have the appropriate score, but it's still something that you just need to be aware of. Okay. Another big one, bank rating. Most people don't even know what a bank rating is. So in simple terms, the bank rating is the average dollar amount that you have. So your average daily balance in your business bank account over a 90-day period. That number needs to be $10,000 or more, right? So if you are sending your bank statements to the lender, they ask for your last 3 bank statements, sometimes it's 6, and they go and they calculate your bank rating, and it shows that, all right, so over the last 3 months, you had an average daily balance of, let's say, $5,000, you're high risk. You're too tight on your money. So that means if they gave you more money, you're still so tight on money that it's unlikely you're going to be able to pay them back. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So all of these things are things that a person might not even know were the requirements because who was going to tell you, but they're the reasons that you end up getting denied. And they're really not that hard to fix. And a last one, and this one is a little bit flexible, but ideally they like to see that you've been in business for at least 2 years.
Hey, so let me interrupt this episode. And before we get back into it, here's what I want to share with you guys. One of the things that we do throughout the year, all over the country, is we do this event called Business Builder Event. This is the event where we literally outline, help you figure out and create a business that you love and a business that support your life. One of the things that we found over the years that many people become basically a slave or work an employee to their business, and they're working so much in their business that they don't actually get to live their life. And in this particular workshop, we help you redesign that, a business that supports your life. So what do you want to have for them, Bojo? What do we have for them because of that?
Man, well, Peter, because they are loyal listeners, and I know they're tuned in every week, and they've told everyone in their life about the Life in Air Show podcast, we have a very, very special offer for you. Now, by the way, I don't know how long we're going to offer this, so this isn't forever. But if you go to lifeinair.com right now and you go to the events tab and then you go to the Business Builder Workshop, you can, when you pick the event you want, when you go to that checkout page, there's a little place right there. It says enter promo code. And guess what? We have a promo code for you for 50. That's 50, half. 50% off the ticket for the Business Builder Workshop by entering the promo code podcast into the promo code field. Instantly, you'll get a 50% savings. You'll see it right there on the screen, and you will be registered for that event. And here's the cool thing. You will be off to the races to create a life and a business that complement each other for the first time, maybe ever. And it's amazing.
One more thing I want to share with you before we jump back into the episode is this. One of the participants at our recent podcast, he was in a hot seat. We do these hot seats in front of the room, and we kind of dissect their business. And one suggestion that he got, and he made the change, went home, made the change, and pretty much within a few months went into stage 4, meaning into his business, that the business basically supported his life. The income that was coming, the cash flow that was coming into his business, by making that one change, started living in a way that he doesn't have to work for the business works for him. So yes. I would encourage you guys, head over to the website, learn about this event, type in podcast, and we'll see you on the next event. Now, let's get back into the episode.
All right, man. So I got a couple questions. First of all, not a lot of people are familiar with like the Dun & Bradstreet rating system and the credit for businesses. Can you walk us through like what because I think most people think of personal credit, like, hey, I got an 800, I got a 600. What does that scale look like? And what are some of the good scores versus bad scores?
It goes up to 100 and anything under 80. So 80 would be the B, over, like you're getting into the 90s, kind of like your school grading system. That's where you've got like an A score. If you're under 70, it's not even worth talking about. So you want to make sure that you are maintaining at least that 80s range, above 80, okay. 90, right? Anything else, what it indicates is that at some point in the relationships that you've had with various vendors or creditors, you didn't pay your bill, or you paid it late, or something else went wrong. And so let's say we're talking about a gas card, right? So the easiest thing, you drive around all day, you've got to put gas in your car. It's low hanging fruit. You're going to put gas in your car. This is money you're going to spend. So you go get a gas card. Well, you took the gas. Let's say that for this month, you spent $400 on gas and you let that bill roll over. When you had net terms, we'll call it net 15. So that meant you had 15 days to pay that bill. 15 days came and went, you didn't pay it. Now your score's gone down. So little things like that are what's impacting your score, but it's not that hard to maintain a good business credit score because all that you're really supposed to be doing is just simply paying the bill and staying in accordance with whatever the terms were that you got. So for those who are not familiar, when someone says net terms, that usually means net 15, net 30, net 60, 90, those are all days. So if you have a net 15 term, it means you have 15 days from the invoice date to pay that bill. If you have net 90, that means you're able to have taken whatever products and services from that vendor and you have 90 days to pay for them. So if that 90 days comes and you have not paid, now you're killing your business credit score because you're showing you're not going to pay your bills on time.
And is that, yeah. And is the score essentially mirror the criteria that the personal credit score has? So for instance, personal credit, you're like, hey, what's your percentage of used versus available credit? How many accounts do you have? What's your longest credit? Like those kinds of things are the same variables?
So it varies depending on what type, because we're talking about different types of credit here in the first place. So some of them will have hard net terms where, like in the previous example, if you were supposed to pay in 15 days, the whole thing was supposed to be paid in 15 days. There is no rollover. Others, there are minimums that you're supposed to pay. Your score can still go up if you're keeping a zero balance, just like if you had an Amex, right? And you keep a zero balance on that Amex every month, your score is going to be really good there. but you're not necessarily going to get punished as heavily as you would in personal credit.
Okay, gotcha. How does somebody check their business credit score?
So you can use a site like Nav. You can go to nav.com.
NAV?
NAV, yep. But Nav is easy for checking your business credit. So it's the closest thing to Credit Karma for business credit
Cool.
that I'm aware of. It's very easy to use.
And that's awesome. Thanks for the tip. So what are the like maximum or the average lending balances that would be transferred on? Let's say there's a business who makes, maybe they make 10 grand a month and they're sitting on 50 grand in their bank account for their business. Like what kind of, and if they're applying for a loan, what's the most they could probably expect to get reasonably?
Usually banks will match your cash flow, honestly.
Okay.
That's why in that previous example, I said, if you've got that $100,000, the bank will happily give you another $100,000. They'll usually match your cash flow. Another way of, especially if we're talking about lines of credit, another way of easily getting business lines of credit is to go and get a certificate of deposit. So for anyone who's not familiar with what a CD is, basically it means that, hey, I had $10,000. Before I spent my money, I went and took it to the bank, put it into a CD. A CD is a savings account that pays higher interest because you're not supposed to touch it for a set amount of time. You can choose the time. Usually it's like 6 months, a year, however long. You're not supposed to touch the money for that long. The bank is paying you extra interest. Well, because you have that money sitting there with the bank, you can then leverage that as security for a business line of credit, meaning that you've now got that $10,000 sitting at Wells Fargo. They're now going to give you a $10,000 business line of credit. Should you not pay for it, they will just simply take the money out of your CD, right? So it's a very easy way for people who have not really established anything to go ahead and start leveraging the money that they do have, the cash flow that they do have, to start building your business credit. And honestly, it lets you use your money twice. So a lot of people, when they're running their business, the first thing they do is they go pay their bills, right? I've got $10,000. I have to go buy this product. I've got this payroll coming up. I've got whatever spendings coming up and overhead. So they pay it out of that initial cash. If you put one step in front of that, put it into a CD, let that earn interest while you now have your business line of credit, you're still able to use the business line of credit to now operate your business. And then, of course, like a good, healthy account, you want to still make sure you're paying off that business line of credit every month so that the balance is fully restored. Do that for 3 months. You're then able to run to another bank and say, hey, I've got $10,000 over here at Bank A. Give me another $10,000. And they will, because you now have a history of paying your bills and managing your money.
So when you say cash flow, are you referring to net at the end of the day after all COGS and expenses are covered? Like that's at the end of the day, what's left, net profit. That's what you're talking about for cash flow?
So they're usually looking at what came in.
So revenue, like top line?
Revenue.
Yeah, they're usually looking at how you're grossing. As far as net goes, because that can be very subjective.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So usually it's just based on what came in. And as far as the bank rating goes, they want to see that you are actually keeping a certain level, a certain amount of money in the account at all times, so that it means you're not too tight on your cash flow. Because if you're spending every single dollar that comes in, well, that's not a very good sign. It means that cash flow is tight. You are now high risk. One thing goes wrong, now you don't pay the bank. So that's how.
Okay.
Is there a percentage that they're looking at?
Sorry, say that again.
Is there a percentage they're looking at for that number? Like
they're fixed numbers.
Like your net margin.
There's actually
percentage.
a table. There's a whole table where you can see all the bank ratings, and we provide that in our business credit course. But it literally is top to bottom. I think goes all the way up to $1 million for the amount of money that you're keeping as your average daily balance, and that correlates to the exact bank rating that you need. The $10,000 level, which is the minimum, is classified as a low 5 bank rating. So that basically means that as long as you're keeping that $10,000 in your account at all times, you qualify for that low 5 bank rating. And, they assume that you've got at least somewhat healthy cash flow. Now, of course, it's still relative. So if you went and let's say you did $1 million in business this month, but you're only keeping $10,000 in the account, that's still a red flag, even though it meets the minimum. So no one's going to go give you the $1 million if you're only keeping
Right.
dollars in your
Like,
account.
what happened to
Still
that
gotta
one?
still gotta keep it relative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what happened to Peter's business actually. Like, and so that's why I'm asking.
Oh, thanks for sharing. Yes.
So, man, okay. So this is fascinating. And also just one last question. I do want to, we have a couple minutes. I want to talk about marketing, but like, do you typically recommend somebody gets like a one-time loan for a business, or is the line of credit a better and smarter approach because you can kind of take it and use it as you need it?
It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
So if you were buying heavy equipment, right, but you're not having to buy the same equipment over and over again, well, a loan would have been appropriate for that.
Yeah.
If you're trying to pay payroll or you're trying to do things like daily business operations, now a revolving business line of credit would have been more appropriate because you have to keep on using that money over and over again for the same expenses.
Okay.
So it really depends on what your end goal is.
I got one more question before we jump into the other, if we have time. So for those of us, because I've heard you say criteria, right? And we talking about having the $10,000 cash flow, then the rating and things like that. If I'm a business owner and I'm not reaching that level yet, what can I do? Do I have any options as far as generating some loans or anything like that? Or what do I do?
Yeah. So the first thing you do is you go to mybusinesscredit.com and you get the Business Credit Builder course, and you spend 90 days building your business credit. But all jokes aside, it really does only take about 90 days to establish some kind of history. Now, there are things that you cannot just speed up. Like if the requirement was 2 years in business and you don't have it, then you just don't have it. But you can go and start building those relationships with the 15 credit accounts we talked about, right? So now I've had those. I've been taking care of them for 90 days. Now I'm able to go back and have a stronger conversation. Or if there's a way to increase your cash flow and just show that, hey, our cash flow is increasing, we are still maybe under let's say that they're looking for $30,000 per month in cash flow. You've got 15, but it went from 10 to 15 to 20. They see that you're on an upward trajectory. They'll still work with you because you're now increasing your cash flow. If you've got personal credit issues, go fix that, because in 90 days, if you fixed it, you've worked with the lenders, everything is now, you've worked with your creditors, everything's now kind of started to wash out on your personal credit. You're now able to go and have a more meaningful conversation with the lenders. And another big thing, just side note, because we talk about this all the time. If you are looking for money today and we tell you, hey, there's all these things you really probably need to fix before you go and apply, just go do those things first. Don't be so desperate for the money that you go and take bad terms, because there is a thing called subprime lending, where basically what that means, they'll give you the money, but they'll give it to you at horrible terms, some kind of terrible interest rate, like 26% or something, or it'll have horrible repayment terms where they'll give you the money, but they're going to start taking the payments automatically out of your account every week. They'll start doing that. It would have been better to just simply wait the 90 days, fix all those things, come back to the table now with more qualifications and get better terms. Our entire process is about pre-qualification. And so if we tell you ahead of time that you do not pre-qualify and we tell you what to fix, just go fix that stuff and then come back. You'll save money in the end. Money can be very expensive. It's expensive if it's not gotten the right way.
Are business interest rates comparable to personal, or is it higher or lower? What do those typically look like an average? They
tend to be lower. Here's the reason for that. If I am looking at a loan personally, my job is usually going to be the only way that I'm going to be paying that back. There's not usually some way that money is, number one, even making me money back, or two, I'm not going to just magically have another source of revenue or income to now pay that bill.
All right.
In a business, the whole reason for giving you money is supposed to be that this money is going to be leveraged to make more money. And so it's better to give people the money at a lower interest rate, something that they can afford, let them leverage that money. They're now able to flip it, essentially, pay their bills and come back to you for more. And banks will keep on giving you more, especially when you've already proven that you can handle it.
Gotcha.
Do they have any restrictions on what you can use that money for? Like, do they want to know what you use that money for? Like, can I go buy my Lambo?
It depends on it depends on what kind of loan it is. So if it's equipment financing and you told the bank that you needed it because you were going to go buy some kind of machinery, and then you go and the machinery is a Lambo, yeah, that's problematic.
Right.
Okay.
Peter, I knew you were looking for a way to get a Lambo. You're still jealous of that time that me and Steve went in that Lambo in California.
You know what? I think I'm gonna have to find myself a new friend to do that, because
Right.
this is not happening. It's been years and years, and it's still nothing. So yeah.
Right. So Bob, I'm fascinated with this topic of finance for business, in particular, like, because I think a lot of people either one assume that there's no other options out there and not understanding it. And I guess to some extent, there is a little bit of like what Peter was mentioning, that early 2-year period, there's not a whole lot, I guess, you can do, because you're still establishing your track record and you're still kind of like learning how to qualify for this. And when somebody wants to take out money for growth, do you guys ever look at projected revenue or projected results, or is it always like, hey, it's the same criteria, it doesn't matter, we got cash flow, we got the 15 credit, does that stay the same?
Yeah. So in my experience, when they ask for the bank statements, if you are suddenly, or not suddenly, but if you're showing consistent growth month over month, they do project it in those cases. So I have seen that. If you show your bank statements, let's say that they ask you for the last 6, right? And it's just showing, well, this month you had 10K in revenue, the following month you had 2, then another month you had 14, but then the next month you had 8, and it's just kind of bouncing. It's not consistent and it's not moving in a steady trajectory. They'll still penalize you for that.
Okay.
So this really depends on what your personal situation is. The other thing to keep in mind, and this is the whole reason for using a company like ours, there are plenty of lenders. We work with 209 of them. Okay. There are thousands of lenders. There are thousands of people that will give you money. All of them have their own reasons for why they will or will not give you the money. And that's why pre-qualification is so important, because the entire process is about, hey, here's the box that you fit in. Let's see which one you match with and who's going to be most likely to give you the money for the parameters that you have. There are loans that are specific to people who need equipment. There are loans to people who are in agriculture, restaurants, whatever it is. There's plain old term loan. There's loans for people who don't even have a business, right? Let's say that you're thinking about starting a business. Obviously, you've not been in business for 2 years because it's not even started yet. There are loans for that. We can get you up to $2 million. In those cases, you've got to qualify for that. But my point is that there's always a box to fit into if you at least know what the box is.
Okay, so I stand corrected then. There are things you can do. Like, so don't just give up or assume there's nothing because they don't have 15 accounts or 2 years.
Yeah. Everything that I mentioned here is just to make the conversation as easy as possible.
Okay.
Rarely does someone have everything, but for every box that you're able to check off, now that conversation is easier and easier and easier. And I always say money can be very expensive if you get it from the wrong place. And what I mean by that is interest rates can be higher than they need it to be. Repayment terms can be more aggressive than they needed to be, right? Maybe you didn't get as much money as you thought you needed. And so your business operations are improving, but they're not improving as quickly as they could have. If you had just had maybe these items checked off on this list here, you would have gotten money that you needed, been able to run your business the way that you wanted to. So none of these, I would say, are just hard disqualifiers, but just keep in mind, for every little thing that you're able to say yes to that you now qualify for, the conversation is just easier for you and you're able to make more out of every dollar.
Got it. And one other question I was thinking of is, are business lines typically secured or unsecured?
They can be unsecured. So we have what we call the 3 C's. So there's cash flow, collateral, and credit. You need 2 out of those 3, any 2. So you can have good credit and good collateral, but you have no cash flow. It's fine. You'll get a loan. You can have good cash flow and good collateral, but you have terrible credit. You can still get a loan because now your collateral is securing it. Maybe you have good credit, you have good cash flow, but no collateral at all. You can still get the loan. It just really depends on the individual situation that you're facing. And usually there's a way to get the loan as long as it's a loan that is appropriate. Because again, going back to those subprimes, just because you can get the money doesn't always mean that you should.
Right. Okay. And then I guess if you have all three, like the better off you are, the better your rate, better terms. Okay.
Now you've got all three. You're just able to, just be the big boss, and
Right.
Doing one of these.
I want it at 2%, and I don't want to make any payments for the first year.
You're calling the shots. Right. Right.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, man, this has been super illuminating for me. I really appreciate it. Like, where do people learn more about what you and your company are doing?
Yeah. So you can go to mybusinesscredit.com. We have the whole pre-qualification system. We provide software for the people who don't pre-qualify. We tell them everything that they need to do to get qualified. We even provide coaching services to where we'll literally hold your hand for a year throughout the entire process so that you can build your business credit. So there are many different ways that we offer to kind of help people move forward. And in, the end of June, we're going to be launching My Business Credit Community, where it's literally, it looks almost exactly like Facebook. So we have our own social media platform where we're going to be bringing in other people who are in this space to do their own teaching, host their own webinars, offer their own products, and just really build a community around helping business owners get the knowledge that they don't even know that they don't have.
That's awesome, man. Now, listen, I know some of you listening or watching right now are like, oh, hold on a second. I thought you were going to talk about finances and marketing. And we've decided we want to dive deep rather than do both topics in injustice. We are going to have Bob back on. So don't worry. You'll get more Bob in a different episode when we talk about the second most common problem he sees with businesses. We covered the first one, the finances, and now we're going to talk about marketing in a future episode. So stay tuned for that. Bob, thank you so much for being on Life Inner Show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Dude, how much of that stuff did you know?
Everything.
Did you? Because I knew probably a third of it. Like I actually learned a lot during this episode, man. Like I wasn't, I knew there were business credit. I didn't really know what the scores looked like or what the criteria were, and for how to get a loan, like the things, the 15 lines, the 2 years, the cash flow requirements, all those kinds of things. Like because I've never taken out business credit. Like truth be told, I've never done that, and so. I didn't know what was involved in it. It's actually pretty interesting to me. I feel like I just learned something.
Yeah, and if you really think about it, I think it's just surface stuff that we just talked about here, because banks have been in business of loaning money for how long? Decades.
Since they've been banks.
Yeah,
decades, dude. No, long time.
Exactly, hundreds of years, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So their criteria probably don't exactly what they need to do in order to make this happen. So. One of the coolest things that I've gotten out of this particular interview is that if you start knowing the rules of the game, right, and knowing the criteria, you can start to position yourselves ahead of that time to be able to, when you step in, like when he talked about the end of the interview about the 3 C's, right? Cash flow,
collateral,
and see my brain part.
Yeah, cash flow.
3 C's. Cash flow, collateral.
Yep, cash flow, collateral, and credit.
Credit, that's right. See, so when you start looking from that perspective, you can start really focusing in your business of which I want to, update and make it better or whatever the case may be. So those criteria help you to grow the business to be able to go and, get that money that you're looking for.
Well, and the other thing is the things he talked about, like it's kind of some of the things you should be thinking about in your business anyway. Like, do you have good cash flow? Or even the stuff at the beginning of the interview, we talked about like, hey, the basics. Like, are you using a business credit card? Do you have a business address? Do you have like an entity? Are you using your personal cell phone as your business? Like these kinds of things actually are part of making the mindset transition to becoming a true business owner. And so they're the basics. Are you keeping your books? Or are you putting your expenses on a piece of paper or an Excel sheet? Like this is just part of running a business. And so some of this stuff is just going to help you like to think through things as a business owner and be more successful in general, even if you don't even take out the money, like it's going to help you.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with that, man. And I think it's going to help you get more clarity and structure in the business to be able to, that if you are not reaching those 3 C's yet, or the 10,000 or things like that, when you start incorporating those things in your business, eventually you're going to start growing the business a lot faster because you're not going to be stuck in the mundane things that you have to do on a daily basis, transferring this from this piece of paper to that piece of paper kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard, I thought one thing I liked was, I've heard of this in the past, is like using like a CD to collateralize, as collateralization for the loan, like, or the line of credit. So for instance,
that was
like,
new to me.
Yeah, you put put 100 grand into a CD. Now you have a line of credit for 100 grand instead of the money just sitting there at the bank. Now that's assuming you don't need it, right? Don't lock it up if you need it. Necessarily, I guess you could use a line of credit, but still, like, you want to kind of just be cautious with this. And at the end of the day, Life and Air, we encourage you to kind of consider the effects of debt and being debt free and weigh that for your particular situation. But it's really cool to know what the options are out there, so you can make an educated, informed decision. And make sure you're doing things in a way that aligns with your vision, and both personally for your vision. For your business.
Exactly. Yep. Totally.
Awesome. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We will have Bob back and talk about marketing, because that's the second most common thing he sees in people that approach him is that being a problem. And, I'm really excited for that episode. So stay tuned. In the meantime, please give us a review, give us a rating, give us a thumbs up. What this does, and some of you guys just think we want it for our own personal gratification. That's not it at all. It's because the more reviews, the more thumbs up we have, the better rating we get, the more it shows up for other people. And this allows us together, you and us, to reach more people, because together we can really change the world and help people live their personal and business visions to a much larger extent. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.